Hey, this is Coach Craig, Coach Craig Sport, and you're listening to the Dynasty Hot Seat podcast.
Yes, hello, and welcome back once again to the Dynasty Hot Seat, the only Dynasty show out there that is a certified inferno. And today we got a great guest on. We got the coach himself. We got Coach Craig. Find him over on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport. He's doing loads of stuff at the minute. Loads of DFS stuff, loads of stuff for fantasy football. Like he's doing stuff for the True North guys over there at True North FFB. He's doing some stuff for WeBet_ATS. And of course, he's helping out absolute legends over at Dynasty Sons as well. And you're doing loads of stuff, Craig, as well. So welcome onto the show. And do you want to tell the folks listening what all the stuff you're up to online?
Yeah, so mainly for me, the first thing is going to be my YouTube channel at Coach Craig Sports. And I do daily MLB DFS videos right now. When we have NBA season, it's daily NBA. And then once we have NFL season, which will be a couple weeks from now, I'll be doing a lot of NFL DFS content too as well. So I think the way I'm going to structure it this year is I'm kind of like do a first look at the slate, kind of break down like the Thursday night game, probably even the Sunday and the Monday night this year too. Didn't really do that as much last year, but I did the Thursday night and then kind of do an overall guys that I would, kind of play or look at playing for the main slate as well. And then obviously you mentioned WeBetATS.com over there, do the daily MLB DFS cheat sheets. And I'll probably end up doing some like a similar type of cheat sheet as well for NFL DFS. And then obviously a little bit with True North, not too much over there lately, but and then the Sons of Dynasty team over there. So helping out with the YouTube channel over there, doing some of the media stuff and whatnot. And then just jumping on podcasts when we have like the whole group podcast and all that.
Love it. Very, very busy man. And we love those guys over at True North. We love Gymnastic. We love Connor 10 as well. Both guests on the show before, but I'm sure you're going to show them how it's done today, aren't you, Craig? Right? You're going to really smash it, right? Absolutely. And we're going to head right into now segment number 1. It's called The Art of War. And it's just, hints and tips that you got, Craig, for Dynasty players listening wherever they're listening. They might be in the back of a bus. They might be sitting at home. Who knows where they are, but you got some tips for them.
Yeah, so for me, I know you said most people do about 3. I came up with about 4. So the first one for me is just kind of take the best player available, regardless of position or what you deem to be the best player available, because maybe you think Sky Moore is a lot more valuable than somebody else does in Dynasty too, and you're willing to take him a little bit earlier, like myself. I would do that. But I mean, I recently just did a startup, and for me personally, like I don't value running backs very much at all in Dynasty, especially right now, just because like where we're at with running back landscape and Dynasty, a lot of these starters are kind of hitting that age cliff where they're 26, 27. And those guys, that's typically where it starts to fall off. You're thinking of guys like Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara, like that whole class there, which was that really loaded running back class, is all now getting old. So eventually you're going to have to come in and like even some of these younger guys, it's like, well, Najee's already 24, so it's like, when's his cliff going to actually be too? Is it going to be a little bit later because he didn't have as many touches at Alabama early, or is it going to still be, like 27? So I think that's kind of interesting. And then the fact that the running backs are coming in. So in that draft, I actually went through and I started 4 wide receivers. Then I took a couple quarterbacks in there too. I didn't take a single running back till rounds 11 and 12. So I ended up with Kareem Hunt and Ramondre Stevenson, who are 2 guys that I like targeting a lot there because they have the ability to go up. And then you get into later rounds and you can grab guys like a guy like Khalil Herbert, who's still really young. David Montgomery's on the last year of his deal. And we already seen that he could do it at the NFL level. And the thing that really surprised me with him is like watching the film and everything, he's a shifty back and they used him on like wide zones and stuff like that at Virginia Tech. But last year with the Bears, he really ran in between the tackles a lot better than he ever did in college. So he's shown the ability to do it. So guys like that, I like taking the upside on. And especially like with running backs, it just takes one injury and then their value goes
Yeah.
up. And then even if you're not going to keep them long term, you can still flip them for something too. So that's kind of the biggest one for me, is just the best player available regardless of position. And that league I'm talking about actually is kind of interesting because it's the tight end premium, but you don't have to start a tight end. So in that league, like, I'm not even drafting tight ends just because, like, if you don't get, like, tight end premium makes it more valuable to have tight ends, but if you don't have a good one, you still don't have a good one. You're just kind of stuck in the middle, and if you don't have to start one, you're still better off starting a wide receiver or whatever. So just figuring out what you value and building that position of strength, because especially in Dynasty, you want position of strength, because at some point in time you're gonna have to trade with somebody, like, no matter how good you think your team is.
Yeah, absolutely like that. I mean, just the draft, always say, you got to draft for your talent and then trade for the need, right? Don't really worry too much about building this like super depth in different positions. Just take, that's always I said, just take the best player that's there, and then you can actually just use those guys as well. You might almost sometimes even draft somebody and you've got no intention of ever playing them. You're like, I'm going to draft this guy because he's the most value, and then I'm going to trade him. And then I'm going to fill any other holes using the value from that person. So, yeah, I really like that. Draft the best player available, not only because it makes your team, littered with better players, but also you got more value and you got more chips on your side that you can use to trade. So, yeah, Craig, love that as a first tip. So you got three more for us. Very excited. We got still three more to go. So let's
even
hear
on that
two.
last, I was gonna say, even on that last point too, like, if we just talk about a guy like Sky Moore real quickly, he's essentially the only Chiefs wide receiver that's guaranteed to be on the team next year. So like MVS has the fakest 3-year contract ever. Like, they can cut him next year and save like 7 million or 7.5 million. I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head. So if he's just bad, they just cut him. McCorman's on the last year of his deal. Juju's on a 1-year deal. Josh Gordon's not going to be around. Like, he's the only guy guaranteed to be there next year. So the guys like that, the situations that can get better is approved to, like say if you compare him to like a Darnell Mooney, it's like Mooney's got a lot of targets guaranteed this year, but they almost have to draft another wide receiver at some point. You'd think
so. Well, you could never really trust what they're going to do with that, right? You never know what's going to happen. But I think you're completely right with Sky Moore there. Yeah, he's one of my favorite people to target right now.
And then my next one would just be, don't get stuck in the middle. So figure out where your team's at. Are you competing? Are you rebuilding? Because, like, the worst thing you can do is be like the Vikings and go 8-8 every year. Like, it's not what you want to do, especially in Dynasty, because you're not making money that way. You might get lucky every once or you might get lucky once every 6 years and get third place, and you're just maybe getting your money back or a little bit more than that, but like, that's not paying for it at the end of the day. So take a good hard look at your team. There's plenty of good resources out there if you do not know how to evaluate your own Dynasty team. Dynasty Nerds has I don't remember what the heck they call it now. It's like the
Dynasty GM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
that's excellent.
Like, and I was listening to them break that down at the expo, and like, there's so much layers in that. Like, even if you just go try it out and try to figure out where your team's at for this year, you can go sign up for like 1 month, and it's like somewhere between $5 and $8. Is that worth it to figure out what your team is? Yeah. So it's like, just figure out where you're at. Kind of look at the resources that you do have. Is your team on that aging cliff where you got Derrick Henrys and Tyreek Hills and guys that are getting a little bit older and going to fall off eventually? Is Aaron Rodgers your main quarterback and you don't know if he's going to retire next year? Figure out where you're at. Are you pushing all the chips in, or are you kind of pulling back and trading off some of your pieces, building up some future assets? And I think part of that too is it's always like draft picks too. Like, people always want to trade for that. Well, sometimes if you get a draft pick and a young player that you think has a chance of some upside, that works out all right too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is maybe like the most important like thing for Dynasty is like, you don't want to be in the middle is bad, and like I would much rather come last because then I get a better pick next year. And then I'm way more likely to be contending again sooner if I get, the 101 pick or I get the 102 pick. I'm getting a much better player than I would at the 106, right? Or the 107, where I'm just sitting in the middle and not really ever making my team any better. So, yeah, I'm a big advocate of that, is looking honestly at team, deciding, can I win? And the more excuses you have to make for your team, before you can say you can win, then the more likely it is that you need to, sell some of these assets off, sell the old guys, sell the running backs as soon as you can. Keep maybe like your younger receivers, but yeah, get rid of the older guys, get rid of the running backs, and start again. I think that's always good advice. So I love that as tip number 2. And you got a third tip for us there, Craig?
Yeah, so even with those running backs, though, like in Dynasty or running backs, I'm like, I'll draft them when they're rookies and trade them away when they get value. Just keep doing that over and over and over again. Because otherwise, like, it's so expensive to get a running back, like, unless you really need one. Like, even last year, I had Derrick Henry go down in one league, and I was trying to trade for running backs. And it was like, even just like for Chase Edmonds, people were trying to get like a first-round pick. I'm just like, no.
It's so hard, yeah.
But then part of the last one kind of goes into the next one too. So for me, it's target one draft class and load up on picks in that draft class. So if so maybe this was 2 years ago and you're looking at 2023 and you're like, hey, this is going to be a draft class. I'm going to try to get as many picks early in this draft class as I can. I did this in a startup actually a couple of years ago where I didn't actually make a pick till the 4th round, but I just kept trading back and loading up on picks. So I ended up with 11, of the first 18, 11 of the first 16 or 18. I can't remember off the top of my head picks in the draft. So my quarterbacks were already kind of set just because I had like Matt Stafford, Kirk Cousins, and Jalen Hurts. So I'm like, and this was, the Trevor Lawrence and Mac Jones and Justin Fields year and all that.
Yeah.
So everybody else is kind of taking quarterbacks, and I'm just like, okay, I'll take Najee, I'll take Javonte Williams, I took Travis Etienne, I'll take Waddle, Devontae Smith, because I had 8 first-round picks or whatever. So it's just like, and if you do that too, you don't have to just diversify your assets because you have so many different ones that somebody's bound to hit out of that group. If you take 8 guys, 2 or 3 are probably going to hit, even if 5 of them don't hit at all. And even then with that, like I picked all 3 running backs, and then somebody really wanted Travis Etienne, so I went ahead and I just traded him like straight up for DJ Moore, and then Etienne got hurt, so it looked pretty good looking back.
And then you're like, I think the longer, like, sort of your scope is for, I'm going to go for that class. Like, for example, I've been the past 3 years getting 2023 picks because I knew that was going to be a good class. And it's so easy. Like, think about how easy it is right now to get a 2025 pick, right? Because it's so far away, people are more willing to give it away. So 3 years ago, it was easier to get a 2023 pick. So I was just like, give me the 23 picks, give me the 23 picks as much as possible, to the point where, like, people will offer me a 22 first, and I'm like, can you just give me a 23 first? And they're like, oh, yeah, sucker. I'm like, nah, well, joke's on you. Let's find out next year. So, yeah, I think setting that target, for the further back you can set it, the further back you can hear a good draft class is coming, then aim for them right away and start targeting them right away, because the value just goes up and up and up with every day, the closer it gets to that draft class. So, yeah, I think that's a great tip there. I'm sorry I interrupted you during your next one.
No, you're good. So the next one I just had was kind of don't fall in love with players too, like especially like last year, like you pick up Marquez Callaway off of waivers, or you get him late in the pick, and somebody offers you a 2nd round pick for it. Just take it. Like, and it goes into this year. You got Romeo Dobbs, however you want to pronounce his last name now. Without going on a whole rant, he was one of my least favorite wide receiver prospects in this whole entire thing, just because there's so much stuff he didn't do well at Nevada. Like, he won on a bunch of 9 routes against a bunch of, Mountain West corners that ran 4.7s. Cool. Like, but like you draft him in the first, or you draft him in the 4th round of a rookie draft, and if somebody's offering you a 2023 2nd round pick for it, you should probably just take it already. Like, Aaron Rodgers has already come out and said he doesn't want this guy to start. He wants Sammy Watkins, Randall Cobb, and Allen Lazard to start. He's already on the record of saying that. Granted, 2 of those guys are probably going to get hurt this year because they have a long history of doing it.
Yeah, Sammy Watkins is probably hurt right now, right? We just don't know, right?
Well, actually, he's out there right now. He already got over his hurt part so far in camp. But at the same time, Christian Watson also has higher draft capital. He is coming back. He had a knee scope. It wasn't anything major. It's a similar one to that I had in my own career playing high school football, but a little bit different there. But, I've been through that process too, and he should be good. Like, he might not be fully 100% by week 1, but he took the opportunity and said, hey, this has been bothering me. He could have just played all year on it and kind of had it bother him and maybe turns into something worse, or had the
Yeah.
surgery and they went and kind of scoped it, just cleaned off some stuff on the meniscus, everything like that. Nothing major.
Yeah.
So he's back at camp now. If he starts gelling with Rodgers, if he starts looking good, then he's probably going to get at him, and they have more incentive to play him because he does have the higher draft capital. And then without going down too far the rabbit hole, they also drafted Samori Torrey out of Nebraska, who I really like, who's a lot more versatile player. He can play inside, he can play outside, he can run a plethora of routes, and he's a lot faster than Romeo Doubs too, even though if you look at their 40 times and everything, it's only like 0.2, 0.02 or 0.04, but like the dude outran the whole Ohio State defense last year at Nebraska. So
so it's field speed versus track speed is different, right?
But pretty much just don't fall in love with players like a Romeo Doubs. And Isaiah Pacheco is a really popular one now. A lot of people are taking shots.
I was going to bring him up.
If somebody's giving you a second round pick for him next year, just take it. Like, especially like when we look at next year's draft class, it should be really good on paper. And I think there's probably 6 to 8 guys that we probably know that are going to be first round picks for Dynasty next year, pretty much for sure. Then you add in the fact if some of these other quarterbacks start hitting, if Will Levis takes the next step up, if he gets first round draft capital in the NFL, he's going in the first round. If Anthony Richardson actually proves himself and does something at Florida, not sure that's going to happen, but you know.
But there's always these guys that's like a Joe Burrow, for example, right? That kind of just takes that big step forward, comes out of like not quite out of nowhere, but takes this massive step forward, and all of a sudden, they're in the first round. I didn't even see that coming, right?
We've seen it 3 years in a row now. So we had Joe Burrow, and then Zach Wilson was the next year, but Zach Wilson did have a really good freshman year. A lot of NFL scouts were watching him then. He played banged up his sophomore year, didn't look as good, and then he came back out and he looked really good, and he kind of popped back up on the radar. And then last year we saw it with Kenny Pickett. Nobody really thought Kenny Pickett was like, if he would have came out the year before, he was a 6th, 7th round pick. And the same thing with Joe Burrow. If he came out the year before, he was a 6th, 7th round pick. He goes back for the extra COVID year, lights the world on fire, and ends up as a first round pick. Whether or not he should have been is another question, but hey, that's the way it was. And that's the way last year's draft class was. So for quarterback. So we'll see how, and we'll take that going forward too, to see if that's a common theme, if teams are starting to devalue these quarterbacks that they don't view as high end, or maybe they don't have as high end traits, but we'll see how that all shakes out. I think there's a lot of guys that could pop up into the first round this year, but I also think there's a lot of opportunities that they all kind of fall apart like last year, because that's the same thing we saw last year. Is we saw everybody's like, if Matt Corral takes the next step, if Malik Willis takes the next step, if Sam Howell does, and Sam Howell was left out to dry at North Carolina, but that's without going too far down that rabbit hole.
But you're right. It's a bit of a it's a mixed bag a lot of the time, right? And it's just, that's why it is important, like, not to fall in love with a player too much, because the NFL is like a complete mixed bag as well. Like, you look at people like Baker Mayfield 2 years ago at the Browns, untouchable, like a quarterback of a generation for them, and now he's not even on the team. Like, it's it moves so fast. So don't fall in love with players too much, because it can come and bite you and take the value while it's there. Absolutely agree. And was that your third tip or your fourth tip, Craig?
Well, that was my fourth. But even on that quarterback point too, I'll just say NFL teams want to have a top 8 quarterback in the league on their team. That's how they view it. And if you're not that guy, they're just going to move on from you. It doesn't matter if you're number 14. They're just, and we've seen it time and time and time again. Unless you offer something extra and you're that number 14, they're probably just going to move on from you. And teams get, like we saw with San Francisco, with them drafting Trey Lance. They're drafting the upside instead of going with the proven known commodity that is Jimmy G, because they're like, hey, but we've seen it with that franchise before when they went from Alex Smith to Colin Kaepernick too. So different regimes, different everything like that too. But there's also, we see it more and more often at the NFL level.
Exactly.
And you see teams constantly chasing like if you don't have a quarterback, you're probably not winning. We saw the Broncos after Peyton Manning retired, quarterback, and none of these guys worked out. Now they just go, okay, we'll take Russell. We'll just go all in on Russell Wilson instead. But even with, I will say one name to potentially look out for next year's quarterback class could be Dylan Gabriel. He was at Central Florida. He had 2 really good the first 2 years were really good. Aired the ball out a ton there. Last year gets hurt, transfers to Oklahoma now. which Oklahoma is a
Okay.
little bit depleted, but it's also a bigger program. So if he goes
Yeah.
out, he throws 4,000 yards at Oklahoma, all of a sudden everybody starts talking about him. I'm not sure he ever gets to a first round draft pick, but there's a chance he gets up to the second round. He's a little bit undersized too, but he was one of those guys. He came out like a high school in Hawaii too and everything, but could be interesting.
Yeah, and sometimes in like with the world of social media, Ron, all it takes is going to be him to have like a training camp throw across his body, and everyone will be like, "Whoa!" Like this guy, like like the Zach Wilson throw that everyone does now,
Yeah.
right? Like that, and then
So I'm glad you mentioned that. I was at the combine this year, and like
yeah,
everybody's hyping up Malik Willis over a couple of these deep throws and stuff. I'm like, he
yeah,
missed on like literally every throw. And like one of the deep throws they were hyping up was a throw to Michael Woods. And he threw it
yeah,
5 yards off target. The guy went adjusted, like stopped, waited for the ball. Like it wasn't a good throw, dude. Like everybody's hyping
no,
it up and whatnot. Like Carson Strong threw the best deep ball at the combine, but Carson
really,
Strong also had knee injuries and kind of off the
yeah.
field. Like he's a head, like he's kind
Carson
of like
Strong, my favorite stat about any player last year was that Carson Strong had like minus like 200 rushing yards last
Mhm.
year or something. That
Yeah,
is unbelievable. That is
but
the best stat.
in college, sacks count towards they count as negative
Yeah,
yards towards quarterbacks. So,
yeah,
and he can't. Well, the knee surgery that he had before the year, he came back and played,
yeah.
even though it was like 2 months before he probably should have played. So he played with a big brace most of the year. So like he like literally was like Peyton Manning, like age 38 Peyton Manning couldn't move around.
Yeah, yeah, poor guy. He's sick. I'm
Mhm.
sure. Where did he end up? He ended up in the Eagles, did he?
Yeah, he signed one of the biggest
Yeah.
UDFA contracts in terms of
Really?
guaranteed money ever. So he, I don't think he's really played that much in the preseason though. So that's kind of weird though.
I've not noticed that. No. Well, let's
Mm,
hope. Let's hope everything works out well for Carson
mm,
Strong. And Craig, superb first couple of tips there. Thank you so much. And we're
mm.
going to get into the real meat of the show now. I'm going to pull up our mock draft board on Sleeper, and it's the same as it has been for everybody else. We've got 12 teams. It is a super flex draft, 18 rounds. And the first question for you, Craig, is in an absolutely ideal world, if you were allowed to choose where you would start from, what position would you pick and why would you pick it?
Well, typically I'm a guy that likes to be in the middle. So in most startups, I prefer to be like 6, 7, 8 in there if I can, or just any draft in general, really. So, like even when you go like Scott Fishbowl, I've been in the 7
Yeah,
group the past 2 years. This year, I
yeah.
think it was a little bit better to be at the 6 spot. Actually, I think the two best spots this year were the 6 and the 9 spot.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of jokes in there, but I'm not going to make those. But I was in the ninth spot actually, so I'm happy I got one of the best spots. So I like
Yeah,
that.
I
So we
think the
go
ninth
in.
spot was really good this year because in my mind there was kind of like 4 tier 1 quarterbacks, and then there was kind of the next group. It was probably like 7 quarterbacks in tier 2. So if you wanted to start
Yeah,
double quarterback in the ninth spot, you could grab 2 of those tier 2 guys pretty easily.
yeah. I went Mark Andrews. Had to get me some tie-ins in there. I had to get Mark Andrews, and I got Mark Andrews and Matthew Stafford, which I was pretty pleased about. So we'll see how that works out. So are we going to lock you in for spot number 6 then? Do you think, Craig?
I'll go number 7.
Let's go lucky number 7 then. Number 7 locked in, and we'll start the draft and we'll see what is going to fall to us. So, as you'd expect, Mahomes, Allen, Herbert, all these guys coming off like you'd expect. Joe Burrow as well. So we're at number 7. You've got sitting up at the top of the board. You've got Jamar Chase. Then you've also got some of these quarterbacks still there, like Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray, along with Najee Harris. But after your tips, I assume you're not interested in that at all.
Not particularly at the running back.
Yeah.
A lot of times in Dynasty, I either end up kind of punting running back altogether and don't take it till late, or I'll grab like maybe one that kind of fell through the cracks and maybe, like round
Mm-hmm.
4 or 5, kind of use them as my main one and then kind of go from there. Last year, there was a draft I was in where Derrick Henry ended up in like, you know,
Yeah.
4th round or some, or 4th or 5th round. I can't remember which. I'm like, well, and it was a league that get like bonus for like long runs and stuff like that too. I'm like, well,
Oh, yeah.
might as well do it. So at this
J.K.
point, like,
Dob- J.K. Dobbins is that guy this year. I think he's slipping way too far. So I think he's a guy been
yeah,
snapping up a lot.
It's an interesting one just because of the first year back from the ACL. Even though he's a full year
Yeah,
removed, it's typically the second year back for guys. But I do like Dobbins quite a bit. And we already found out yesterday that Gus Edwards is starting the year on the pup, so he's going to miss at least
yeah,
4
yeah,
games.
yeah,
But in the 7 spot here, with what I'm looking at, I'd probably just go Lamar Jackson here. I think
yeah.
getting that kind of I don't know if you want to call him elite at this point, but getting that really strong quarterback, your Konami code quarterback. And I think
Yep.
them going back to that run heavy scheme is probably going to benefit him some more. And maybe we see that efficiency bump up in passing touchdowns again.
Yeah, I think Lamar Jackson is. Yeah, I think he's definitely in that, maybe not quite in that number one tier with Mahomes and Allen and Herbert, but for me, he's top of that second tier with
Mm.
Burrow and Dak and Murray. I think I put Lamar Jackson at the top of that just because he's so lethal, on the ground and his passing. I know we hear it every year. Oh, he's looking good in camp. His passing's looking better, but his passing is improved from when he came in. So I'd expect him to just keep sort of upticking that very slightly. So yeah, I think Lamar Jackson, good pick there at 1-7 for sure. And we're back on the clock again. You got Jalen Hurts sitting up at the top of the board there with Austin Eckler. Mark Andrews for that stack is not tight end premium. Russell Wilson, Brees Hall, Trey Lance. And then I can also, if you want, Craig, I can filter by position so you can see
Yeah.
who's available at different spots.
Because I'm thinking here too. So there's a couple different ways you could do this too. Like if you're really gung ho on Trey Lance, then like there's a pretty big advantage. I'm assuming this is super flex, correct?
Yeah.
So there's a pretty big advantage to having Lamar Jackson and Trey Lance together. If Trey Lance hits, then you just kind of have an advantage at your quarterback position every single week. So we'll just go that way. See how this all plays out.
Nice. We'll get Trey Lance locked in, and yeah, like if both like we know Lamar Jackson, right? Lamar Jackson's gonna be fine. He's gonna hit. He's gonna be a quarterback one. But if Trey Lance also hits, then they've both got sort of what top 5 quarterback potential. Like having 2 top 5 quarterbacks on your team is just it gives you such an advantage. So yeah, I like that Trey Lance pick there at 2-6, and I've certainly been seeing him going a bit earlier in that as well. So I think that's pretty good value. And we're back on the board again. Pick number 7 of the third round. Players available: Stephon Diggs, Jalen Waddle, Matthew Stafford, Travis Kelce, Trevor Lawrence, T. Higgins, and others below. Anyone standing out for you?
So I'll even say back when we go back to Trey Lance real quick too. Like you got Trey Lance there and Jalen Hurts too. I'm a big believer in Jalen Hurts, but also at the same time, like Trey Lance has more leeway than Jalen Hurts at this point in time for Dynasty. So if it's like this, if it's redraft, I'll take Jalen Hurts. But if it's Dynasty, I'm gonna end up taking Trey Lance. So I think Trey Lance could hit. He's just it depends how they use him and how he develops as a passer. So there was really good throws on his film at North Dakota State, but I remember everybody's hyping up because they're like, "Oh, he didn't throw any interceptions." I watched 6 North Dakota State games, and there's 4 dropped interceptions in there too. So that year, so we'll see.
Yeah, and as well, like it was a lot of the time it was him just throwing up. Christian Watson's a foot taller than everyone else in that field. He's a lot faster than everyone, and he was the competition you got to take into account. But Trey Lance got a shot. I would take him over Jalen Hurts too. I'm not a big Hurts guy at all. I think Hurts might. I think he's done enough to earn a shot at another team after the Eagles, but I can see the Eagles replacing his successor if their record does not improve sharpish.
Well, they had I'm a Texans fan, and they had like the rumors initially, like Deshaun Watson might to the Eagles, and I'm like, just give me a Jalen Hurts back. I love Jalen Hurts. He's from the Houston area too, so it's just like come home party. I think it'd be. And then Pep Hamilton's here, and like that would have been a really good situation. So
well, that's good. That's 2. This is 2 Texans fans on the show in a row. Who would have ever thought that? We had Eric Romoff on our last episode, and now we got Craig. 2 Texans fans back to back. Wow, excellent. Maybe we can have maybe we can have a chat about Davis Mills later. I loved that chat the other day, so maybe we can chat about Davis Mills later on. Right?
So this is a tough one because I feel like you're taking wide receiver here, and like if you think your team is going to be more competitive this year, you're probably going to go with the Stephon Diggs way. If you're trying to play long term, you got Jalen Waddle, you got T. Higgins there. I'm a pretty big fan of T. Higgins, so I'll just take him there.
Nice.
The games that he and Jamar Chase played together last year, he actually had more receptions, slightly more yards.
Wow.
Chase had the higher touchdown still, but
Yeah.
he also
Yeah, I
had the
love T. Higgins as a like I was going to say as a prospect. He's not really a prospect anymore, right? He's the real deal, right? He's solidified. He's like a solid NFL player now for sure, T. Higgins. So yeah, I really like that. And he's going to continue to get lots of targets because the Bengals are going to throw the ball. Joe Burrow is going to throw the ball, and yeah, a bit of a run on running backs there with Kamara, Chubb, and Barkley coming off the board, and Pittman Jr. and Waddle as well not coming back to us. But we're back on the board now. We've got Matthew Stafford up there, Travis Etienne, who we talked about earlier, Kittle, Fields, Cam Akers, Drake London, and then other people below as well. And I can show you different positions if you want.
I was gonna say, I think that feels a little high on Drake London. I'm a big Drake London fan, but I think their draft rankings get a little high now.
Yeah, I agree.
His ADP is a little bit lower than that in most formats, but it's showing 46 there too. So
yeah.
Ideally, I'd like to have Michael Pittman Jr. come back there. He was a big guy for me too, that draft class. So that year, I had CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman was my number 3 that year. So those guys all worked out pretty well. Not tooting my horn too much there, but God, this gets tough.
Did you have T. Higgins as 4 there by any chance as well?
He was 4th or 5th, I feel like.
Yeah, nice.
I just remembered I remembered I didn't like Rager, I didn't like Mims, and I didn't like Laviska Shenault. They all kind of haven't done much.
yeah, that's some good advice right there, right? That's Mims, poor Denzel Mims, right? He's like, he might not play for a while, right?
He's just a random guy that popped off in Baylor his senior year, had like a big 1,000-yard season, then he went to the Senior Bowl, looked decent there, had a good combine. He was just a big guy that ran fast that didn't really know how to run routes. And now in the NFL, he doesn't know how to catch either. So
he's got worse somehow, right? That's
what's available at wide receiver though?
Let's have a look. Drake London, we talked about. DJ Moore, guy you talked about earlier as well. Deontay Johnson, who's got his money now as well, right? He's just been extended from the Steelers, and a couple other guys. There's anyone standing out?
I'll take DJ Moore. He's been one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and nobody talks about him. Everybody hates him in fantasy just because he only scored 4 touchdowns or like touchdown every year or whatever. But it's like, if you looked at like a couple of those years, like the Panthers only had like 17 passing touchdowns too. So it's like, what's he supposed to do? Like,
I think he's going to have a great year as well now, obviously with a new quarterback, right? I think this is going to be a big year for DJ Moore.
It's the best thrower at quarterback he's ever had in his career. But that's not saying much when you had the ghost of Cam Newton after his shoulder. Plus he wasn't the most accurate guy in the world anyways. And then you had Kyle Allen, who couldn't throw a deep ball to save his life the one year. And then like you got Sam Darnold. There was a little bit of there might have even been Will Greer in there for like 1 or 2 games, and PJ Walker. But I bet Matt Rule is very happy right now that not very happy that Matt Corral got hurt, but he's happy that he doesn't have to cut PJ Walker now. I think they would have cut Sam Darnold over PJ Walker just because PJ Walker was the first quarterback at Temple with Matt Rule. That's like him cutting PJ Walker would be like cutting his son, essentially.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
They have a very strong connection there. So I don't think he'd have an easy time cutting him. But let's see, 5th round. I was kind of hoping like Drake London would come back. Let's see. Who's available at wide receiver now?
Let's have a little look. Wide receiver.
That's probably going to be my question like every time now. So
I'll keep it locked on wide receiver for a few rounds. Though we'll see what it's like. We got Terry McLaurin, Mike Evans, Treylon Burks, Jerry Jeudy, Garrett Wilson, Keenan Allen, Chris Godwin peeking at the bottom there as well.
Yeah, so this kind of gets to the interesting point where you got some of these guys that are a little bit older now. Terry McLaurin's not a spring chicken like he was like 24 when he got to the NFL. So but he did get the contract, which is good. But who knows if he ever has a quarterback? Even though I do believe in Sam Howell. And Sam Howell, he's made some nice
Carson Wentz as well. Carson Wentz is one of those. I know we talk a lot about like players who are good NFL players but bad like fantasy players, guys like, I don't know, like Tim Patrick, for example, right? Who's a good player but doesn't do
Oh,
anything for your
I love
fantasy
him.
team, right? Carson Wentz is a bad NFL player, but Carson Wentz is a good fantasy football player. He racks up points, and
Sometimes.
his receivers usually do pretty well too. So I think Terry McLaurin could have a good year, and he might actually, outproduce his ADP for the first time in his career as well.
So he's kind of tricky one just because he's a little bit older. I mean, I feel like this team's
Yeah.
pretty young already. I
Mm-hmm.
love Mike Evans. I don't know. Who knows if Godwin's playing week 1 at this point in time? I really have no idea. It's just like,
Yeah.
there's like optimism, but I feel like if you're the Buccaneers, you probably just, what's the harm of starting him on the pup and just giving him 4 extra weeks? Like,
Just let Julio play
you
for
got
a bit,
Julio.
right?
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
And even if the only reason let's just say even if the only reason you signed Julio is to get past, those first couple weeks, that's worth it in the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not big on Burks. I feel like his weight just fluctuated so much in college. He was kind of out of shape coming in the combine. The
Yeah.
dude's one bad offseason from turning into Calvin Benjamin and being 255 pounds. Like, that's a realistic thing. Like, and in Dynasty,
Yeah.
like, I don't want a guy that's just going to turn into a pumpkin either. Like, he could
Yeah.
could be very good, but at the same time, he could just turn into a pumpkin and then have no value, like, real quick.
Yeah,
Jerry
it's been done before.
and Jerry Jeudy, I'm not really interested in. I wasn't that high on him out of college. Yes, he's a pretty route runner, but he really doesn't do anything else. Garrett Wilson might just be my pick. I don't know. Like, if we'll go with the young, so we'll just go Garrett Wilson here. I love Garrett Wilson. He was my top wide receiver this year. He just does everything well. Like,
Yeah. I agree. He was my top guy coming out as well. Garrett Wilson. Just, yeah, you're right. There's no obvious flaws there, right? I suppose your only problem is what's going to happen with Zach Wilson. Is he going to get enough from that? But I think Zach Wilson might take a step forward too this year.
I definitely believe in Zach Wilson. Garrett Wilson, like, you know how good he is? Like, they were in the little combine drill where they throw you the like multiple bullet passes or in or across and whatever, they would like make fun of him because he like skip or something or like do a little jump when he like after he caught it or something like that. Well, that's what you have nothing else to critique this guy about, so you pick that because he's that good.
Yeah, he seems to be like really solid as well. Looks everything. What's nice about Garrett Wilson as well is unlike sort of like Treylon Burks or like some of these other guys aren't surprised. Not a lot of talk about Garrett Wilson in training camp, right? Which means to me is he's just doing his thing, right? He's doing a good job and he's probably ready to go for week 1.
I think there is talk, but everybody else is kind of just focused on Elijah Moore so much. Like, I don't know. I wasn't super high on Elijah Moore coming out. He was decent, but he was just a little bit he was getting overdrafted and kind of overrated in my opinion. Yes, he had this stretch last year where he had like 5 games where he was like a top 5 wide receiver or whatever. But if you look back at those games, one was a garbage time touchdown. 2 of the touchdowns were against the Colts where they had backup safeties in who forgot how to play coverage and he was just wide open. Like, he didn't do anything special to score touchdowns on those plays.
Yeah. And I don't think he was ever going to be, right, just with his draft capital and everything like that. He was never really going to be like that number 1 receiver on that Jets team. Like, they were always going to bring in somebody like a Garrett Wilson to be that true like number 1 receiver.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting to see where he plays this year because he should play in the slot, but he was forced to play on the outside last year because Crowder and Berrios and whatever. They brought Berrios back. Corey Davis is still floating around, so it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out in the end.
Yeah, exactly. We're back on the board. Keenan Allen's still there. Devonta Smith is there. Hollywood Brown, Rashad Bateman, Chris Olave, Jameson Williams, Elijah Moore. He must have heard us. He's sitting there as well. And that's just the receivers. You can look at other positions as well if you want.
I guess we'll take a peek at running back. Why not?
Let's have a little peek at running back and see. Josh Jacobs, Zeke, James Conner, AJ Dillon, Elijah Mitchell, James Cook, Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
It's like, I don't really want Jacobs. He's slightly more enticing now that he might get third down work. I'm not sure he gets it, but he might. Just
might, yeah.
Kenyon Drake. But the biggest thing about them getting rid of Kenyon Drake just means they're keeping Abdullah and Bolden both for special teams. because they both
Yeah.
play special teams, and
Yeah.
they're both really good at it. And then they both can be the third down back if need be, but they might let Jacobs have that role. But at the same time, they're also talking about a dude that split carries at Alabama, has been hurt every year in the NFL, plays through it a lot, but
I also think Zamir White might eat into some of his time too. I would
he will a little bit on early
put
downs.
money on that. Yeah.
And I feel Zamir, if you're going back to don't fall in love with players, Zamir White is that guy too. Like if we get to the next off season and Jacobs ain't there and they ain't signed anybody yet and somebody's offering you a good pick for Zamir White, just take it. Because they're going to bring in one of these other talented running backs. And it's going to be some type of committee, even if Zamir White's the early down back and they draft Amir Gibbs to be the pass catching back and they just split it 50-50, it's still 50-50. And we saw happen with Antonio Gibson this year. Like,
where they drafted 100 running backs to kind of split roles with him, right? It's absolutely, I don't know what's going on at the Commanders, but they seem to have like a first down running back, a second down running back, and a third down. Like they have different running back for each down, and then a different running back for the goal line, and then it's like I don't know what is going on there.
I don't know either, but it's when it was announced that McKissick was signed with the Bills, I'm like, trade Antonio Gibson now because his value is not going to get any higher than this.
Yeah.
And then there was all the camp visits from every running back in the draft, pretty much, that was considered to be at least a day 2 pick.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, the writing's on the wall. Just
I can tell you a trade that's been working for me. If you're looking to get off Antonio Gibson, everybody listening as well, go try, and this has happened 3-4 times we've got this done. Go try and get Antonio Gibson, try and sell him for, you want to give Antonio Gibson in a second and get Aaron Jones and a first in 23 if you can. That's a trade that has worked a couple of times for me. So go out and try it. And yeah, I think that's an absolute slam dunk trade.
Yeah, I take the Aaron Jones side every day of the week.
But
yeah, I think even when you're looking here, Ezekiel Elliott's somebody like, you know what you're going to get out of him, and everybody's just like, they just want to poo-poo him. Like, oh, he no good no more. He's washed. He played 14 games with a torn PCL. You try doing that and see what happens. Like,
and Ezekiel is going to be a running back one again, right?
Pollard's more explosive and yada yada yada. But right now, if you're drafting Pollard at his ADP, you better hope he plays some slot and starts catching some more passes, because otherwise you're not going to be happy about it at the end of the year. Maybe in this round. We'll see if he's there next round. I'm like, maybe AJ Dillon, but I'm like, what if he's there next round? Who's at tight end?
Let's have a look, see who's left there. Dalton Schultz is there, Dallas Goddard, Pat Fryermuth, Dawson Knox, Mike Gesicki, and Cole Kmet. Although Mike Gesicki, right? At what stage do you like Sleeper have to consider not having Mike Gesicki listed as a tight end? Because he does not play a tight end, right? 90% of his snaps were from the slot, right? He doesn't play a tight end.
So he played 75 out of 720 snaps inline last year, which was the lowest percentage of any tight end in the league. Paid 420 at slot. I think it's 420 at slot, and then 225 out wide. He was a wide receiver last year. Now you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle together. They both probably are best in the slot, but they also brought in Cedric Wilson, who's best in the slot. So there is no Mike Gesicki playing in the slot now. Mike Gesicki is going to lose snaps this year because he's not a good blocker. They have Durham Smythe, they have Hunter Long, who can block. He's going to lose snaps to those guys. Both those guys might come in and play on 2 tight end sets, and Gesicki might just go off the field entirely too. So, like, Gesicki was as good as it could possibly get for him last year, and he still failed. So, like, he's one of the there's tight ends I will just not draft, and he's one of them. I'm not like Dallas Goedert's, the advanced metrics are so good for him, but like the fact you brought in AJ Brown's just going to eat away at so many of his targets that it's just not going to matter.
Absolutely.
Dalton Schultz, I really like this season. So like in redraft, I like him a ton. But he doesn't have that until he gets that long-term contract. I do not want him in Dynasty. But they also drafted his replacement in Jake Ferguson this year, who is essentially the same guy.
Have they haven't paid Dalton Schultz, have they? His contract situation is still ongoing.
So mainly a tight end. I was just looking to see if TJ Hawkinson was still here. He would get drafted last round. I think Hawkinson's a guy that's kind of underrated at this point in time. Nobody's talking about him.
I just finished. I'm doing a charity tournament, this redraft. I got TJ Hawkinson in round 12. I don't know how that happened, but I'm delighted about it. Absolutely thrilled about it.
I
Yeah.
think in
So
Dynasty, you can probably get him for cheap now too. Like as long as it's not a tight end premium league or whatever. But hey, so here's the thing: like either he stays on the line, signs a contract, gets a better quarterback there. Jared Goff's okay. Like he's
it's
just
okay.
Jared Goff's the
Yeah.
bar. Like if your quarterback's worse than Jared Goff, you need a new quarterback. If he's better than it, you're all right.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's the minimum bar essentially at this point in time. Once some pun and who was it before? I don't remember who it was before, but like the upper echelon, it's like if your quarterback's better than Kirk Cousins, you can probably compete. If he's worse,
Was it like, is he like the new Nick Foles sort of, right? He's like, yeah.
yeah. Well, Kirk Cousins is the new Matt Ryan, where PFF talked a lot about that. Where if your quarterback's better than
Yeah.
Matt Ryan, you're doing pretty good. If he's worse than Matt Ryan,
Yeah.
you're not doing good. So now
Yeah.
that's kind of Kirk Cousins' role.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, no, Dalton Schultz possibility there. We obviously still was Keenan Allen still the Keenan Allen, Devontae Smith
Yeah,
still
so
there.
there. That's like really enticing just because of the value you could get this year.
Yeah.
I love Devontae Smith a lot, so it's really
Me
hard for
too.
me not to take him. I think I'll just take him here anyways. Like
Nice.
that's my dude. Like I was on him like when they had all four wide receivers at Alabama. I'm like, this dude's the best one. I'm like, I don't care about Jerry Jeudy. I don't care about Henry Ruggs. Like
Yeah.
Waddle walked into the perfect situation last year too. All the other wide receivers died.
Yeah.
He just got force fed a bunch of targets. That
Yeah.
might be the best year of his career. Like that legitimately could be the best year of his career just because he has force fed everything. And now you're playing your early career, at least with Tyreek Hill. And I think this
Yeah.
year, kind of all that short and intermediate stuff's going to go to Tyreek Hill, and they're going to use Waddle as the deep threat and use his speed again.
Yeah. So yeah, it could just be that he's reliant on those, less percentage-wise likely catches to get even thrown to him in the first place, or even make some of those big plays. So he might have boom and bust weeks coming
Yeah.
up next year. But we're happy with getting Devontae Smith locked up then in round number 6. So let's get Devontae Smith in our team.
And Tua is only throwing one touchdown of 30 yards or more in the NFL. And the odd
Really?
part, yeah, somebody had a great stat about that the other day, and it's I don't remember who it was, but Odell Beckham Jr. has thrown 2 touchdowns of 30 yards or more.
That's crazy. Wow. So hopefully, you'd like to think Tua can overtake Odell Beckham in the 30-yard touchdown race this season, right? Hopefully he can get a few more than that. And we're back on the board. We're in round number 7. And wow, look at that. Who's sitting up at the top? Tua Tagovailoa after all that talk. He's sitting up at the very top with Zach Wilson there. And do you have a strategy here, Craig? I know obviously you said take best player available, but at a certain stage, if the best player available is oh, it's a quarterback this round. Oh, it's a quarterback this round. Oh, it's a quarterback. Yeah. At some stage, you go I might have too many quarterbacks.
Yeah. So for me, I kind of like Zach Wilson here. I think it's fair value in the 7th round. You get the build-in stack with Garrett Wilson. I'm not a guy that I don't think you need to stack. I don't think you should go out of your way to stack, but if it happens naturally, that's cool.
Yeah.
So probably just go Zach Wilson here. I do like the upside. Nice. At this point in time, getting him in the 7th round, here's the thing. If he comes out and has a good year, he's a 2nd round quarterback in startups next year.
Exactly. Yeah, he jumps right up to the top of that list, right? If he comes out and he looks pretty good. He's obviously got that little injury niggling out at the minute. Is he going to be ready for week 1? Are they going to sit him?
Maybe. We'll see. So he had a slight minute. They cleaned up his meniscus. He's got a bone bruise in his knee too. He's 2 to 4 weeks. He could be ready for week 1, but it's probably more likely to be week 2.
Yeah, very good. Hopefully that comes out of his games because he was hurt a bit last year as well. So hopefully he can sort those health issues out coming into his 2nd year in the NFL. And round number 8, Dallas Goedert, who we briefly spoke about earlier, he's still on the board, sitting up at the top. Pat Fryermuth as well, who we spoke about. Then you got Cortland Sutton, CEH, Juju Smith-Schuster, Kenny Pickett, Gabe Davis poking down at the bottom there. And obviously, like before, I can switch to different positions. Oh, someone perked your interest there.
Gabe Davis is kind of interesting. I think Cortland Sutton.
Yeah.
Just go give me Cortland Sutton. I like Cortland Sutton quite a bit. Obviously, I talked about how I really don't care for Jerry Jeudy too much. I I love Tim Patrick, but obviously he got hurt this year. So
Yeah, yeah, Cortland
I
Sutton as well. So Jerry Judy as well. You talked about earlier. Obviously, you think Cortland Sutton is the clear number one there ahead of Judy.
think so. I think in terms of he's shown it at least, before he had what was it, a top 20? He was a wide receiver 2 season when his quarterbacks were Joe Flacco, Drew Lock, and Brandon Allen.
Yeah,
Like now he gets Russell Wilson, the best quarterback he's ever played with.
Yeah,
He's
and
gonna get
Russell
some.
loves to sling it downfield, which is a big strength of Cortland Sutton, obviously as well.
Yeah, and Judy doesn't work downfield well. Like Tim Patrick would have been great, but I love Tim Patrick anyways. That's my boy.
I like me some Tim Patrick too as well. As I was saying, it was the first guy I thought of earlier. I was like, man, Tim Patrick is so good. I wish he could do something for my fantasy team because he's such a good player. But yeah, he just could never seem to get that fantasy relevance. And hopefully, he makes a speedy recovery and he's back playing again next year. Wish him all the best, obviously. And we're back on the board. Run number 9, Kenny Pickett, Tony Pollard, who you talked about earlier. I assume you're going to be avoiding him, and Allen Robinson, Hunter Renfrow, Brandon Cooks, Michael Thomas. So now we're getting towards the riskier side of things, right? A couple of picks that have asterisks next to them now as we creep into round number 9.
Yeah, let's look at running back real quick.
Let's have a search. Have we got any running backs yet? We do not. No running backs just yet.
I don't know what a running back is.
So we've got Tony Pollard, Kareem Hunt, Damian Pierce, who's pretty good. Rashad White, Isaiah Spiller, Devin Singletary, Chase Edmonds poking down at the bottom.
I like Pierce. I have a lot of question marks about Pierce too, and being a Texans fan and everything. He was good on a per touch basis when you look at it at Florida, but he was always in a committee. Part of that was Dan Mullins. The dude scored a touchdown one every 10 touches last year, which is pretty good. But it's I don't know how it translates. I know a lot of people are excited about him because he didn't play in the second preseason game. They're like, oh, he's the unquestioned running back 1 now. Well, the official depth chart came out 2 days ago when Marlon Mack or Rex Burkhead is listed running back 1, and then Pierce behind that. So caution your optimism a little bit. I think he'll be the guy. I can't remember
who said about Rex. Sorry, about Rex Burkhead. I can't remember who had a quote about him, but so it was Rex Burkhead's so old he's named after a dinosaur. It's that's fantastic.
I mean, he's only 31, 32, if I remember.
I know, but ancient for the NFL, right? So yeah, I think with Pierce as well, the reason most people are excited is because everyone's thinking he's got to be better than Marlon Mack, right? But people kind of sleep on Marlon Mack. Marlon Mack was good before his Achilles blew out.
Yeah,
he was a good player. So we'll see what he can do. But I like Pierce, and hopefully he does well for your guys next year. And is he standing out to there, or are you wanting to see other positions?
I mean, I like him. I like Rashad White. All these running backs I kind of like, but I'm just there's enough of them there that I don't have to go back there. Let's go back. Let's go to wide receiver one more time, just because I think there's some good value here at wide receiver. Allen Robinson might bounce back. I know a lot of people are higher on him in redraft than I am, though. They're like, oh, well, Matt Stafford's the best quarterback he's ever played with. Well, he's never played with a wide receiver that demands targets like Cooper Kupp either. So he's not getting force fed. So he doesn't have the ceiling that he would otherwise. We saw him suck it up last year. I still have my conspiracy theories that he just said, screw Chicago and didn't really try. And then he kind of got banged up too. But he's on that age cliff where it's he could have just fallen off and been terrible too. There's a possibility. Hunter Renfrow is very, very interesting. I know they added Devontae Adams, but this kind of where he's going, it's not that bad a risk with Josh McDaniels, who loves his little slot wide receivers. That could be all right. Brandon Cooks, is perpetually just there. You know what you're going to get out of him every year. You got the upside of Michael Thomas here. I like Chase Claypool this year. I might be out on the limb and everything was saying that he made a really nice catch in the preseason game, whatever, a couple weeks ago,
Are you a bit worried about Claypool? Like I said, I'd be a bit worried about Claypool just because, obviously they've got Pickens now as well, and they can do very similar things unless that's their plan. Is they're just going to have 2 guys that can do, get up my ball, catch the ball. Are you worried about Pickens coming in?
I'm not as much as most people because they took him and everybody's like, oh, Claypool's going to lose his job now, whatever. I'm like, He's bigger and faster than Pickens.
Mm,
he
that's true.
he does all the same things. He just happens to be bigger and faster. And there's a chance that they might play Claypool in the slot this year. And if that happens, how's a little 5'10" slot corner going to cover Chase Claypool?
He's a
Like,
big dude. Yeah, you're right.
and if you get Kenny Pickett in there, that young quarterback, he might look for that big body receiver, that tight, young quarterback
Yeah.
try to tip.
Yep.
Typically, tight ends that might end up just being Chase Claypool. There was talk about him during the NFL draft that just convert him to tight end. Some teams were
Yeah.
talking about that, so it's not out of the question. I think whoever ends up playing the slot there is going to have some value.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, they don't like to play Deontay in the slot. Pickens had some decent film at Georgia when he was in the slot, although it was a very, very small amount.
Yeah.
And the thing about him, too, is as much as everybody's hyped out about him, he's still a very raw player. 80% of his production came from like go and slant routes. So he's still got some ways to go. I don't know if it's going to be this year, but somebody just showed me a draft board. I think it was yesterday or the day before in redraft, and somebody took Claypool in the last round, like round 15 of their draft. I'm like, that's insane to me. For a guy that had 11 touchdowns as a rookie.
Yeah.
He's going to get some of them back this year. And I think that's a reason to be off Pat Freiermuth too, just this year, because he saw so many red zone targets last year. He got the touchdowns off them. If more of that goes back to Claypool, then Freiermuth's kind of, I think he'll have more production, but he might not have the touchdowns this year.
Yeah.
So it'll be very interesting to see. And if they throw less, all Pittsburgh might come down this year because they might not throw as much, because last year they threw a ton with Big Ben.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they also rushed a ton as well, right? Like
a decent amount.
Yeah, like Najee Harris had only Jonathan Taylor had more rush attempts than Najee Harris, which is crazy.
He played the largest percentage of snaps of anybody compared to like the rest of the running backs in their team. So he's kind of forced into that way pretty much because
but then Najee had he had the most receptions as well, actually. So they obviously did throw the ball, right? Like he had the most receptions for any running back too, right? So they're throwing the ball a lot, and they didn't address that offensive line at all, right? So they're still going to be terrible.
They signed 2 free agents. They brought in James Daniel at guard. He's an average to slightly above average guard, so he'll fill one of those spots that Trey Turner left. But Trey Turner, he had a couple down years before that, but he actually played okay last year. So it's just kind of more of a one-for-one replacement. And then they brought in Mason Cole too, who's just never been great, like honestly. And he might play center, and then they might kick Kendrick Green. There's been talk of them kicking Green out of Illinois that they drafted last year and played some center over to guard, and then Dotson, who everybody thought was their best offensive lineman, might not even start. So, and then I don't trust their tackles at all. They're supposedly running Dan Moore out again, and like 2 years ago at the Senior Bowl, I thought he was the worst offensive tackle there. And they started him most of last year. They're doing it again this year. And then that Chumo Okekafor, however you say his last name, he's tackle again, and he hasn't shown like anything, honestly. So I don't trust their offensive line at all again. And they didn't draft a single offensive lineman for a team that had a terrible offensive line. It's just
I couldn't believe that. Yeah, couldn't believe it.
Doesn't make sense to me, but what do we know?
No. Exactly. Exactly right. They'll probably have the best offensive line next year, and everyone will be like, "What? How have they?" Yeah, like it's hard to predict, right?
I think we'll just go. I think we're just gonna go Hunter Renfrow here, though. Josh McDaniel's system, like we saw the upside last year, even though now you have Devontae Adams and all that stuff too. I think it's gonna be very interesting to see how they use their offense. Who's kind of going to be that deep threat? I think they might try to use vertical or Darren Waller to stretch the field vertically more, like up the seams and stuff. And then it seems like Keelan Cole is going to be the other wide receiver on the outside. He can at least threaten deep. So
Keelan Cole, like I think he seems to be signing for teams just to do that. Like he's obviously got that role on different teams where it's just he'll stretch the field, and he seems to be pretty good at that, and he'll just move around. I don't know how many teams Keelan Cole's had now, right? So it's his third, fourth team.
Probably fourth, I think.
Yeah, right, and he's has that similar role all the time, so he'll be fine at that, I'm sure, right?
I guess we'll take a peek at running back again.
I was about to say, Chase Claypool is still there.
I know. I'm looking at it. And I'm like, I kind of like that.
Yeah.
Just because, you're talking like rounds 10, 11. You're like, you want some upside there. God,
Rashad White still there.
I'm kind of like, does Ramondre Stevenson come back around if we take Claypool here? Let's find out. We'll take Claypool and then we'll see if Stevenson comes back or not.
Awesome. Let's do that. We'll take Claypool, and we're hoping to see as little green as possible on this draft board. So far, pretty good. Bit of a run of wide receivers and tight ends. And hey, look at that. Oh no! Wow.
They're just talking too much, but
I mean, that
yeah,
is
there's
like,
oh god, Tony was there too. I like Tony quite a
yeah,
bit. He's very talented if he can stay on the field at least.
yeah,
He's
exactly
kind of like
right.
the new AJ Brown though.
Yeah, just the way he's
Tony's
like
kind of
twitchy,
like
the
the
way he
new AJ Brown.
moves. Yeah,
He's
let's hope
very good
he.
at football, but you don't know if he's going to start rapping or punch somebody in the face or what.
Yeah, exactly. So let's hope
Uh,
he behaves himself a little bit better than our friend
yeah.
Mr. Brown,
So I
right?
think we're kind of
So
I think we're kind of out on wide receiver now. We kind
yeah,
of
Tyler Lockett, Michael Gallup, yeah, these guys
like
are
I have
less
like a
intuitive.
little bit of interest in Robert Woods, but it's more in redraft
Mm,
than dynasty.
yeah,
I guess we'll peek at running back.
let's have a look and see who's there. Chase Edmonds, I think, will be at
Suppose
the
we
top.
should
Chase
take one.
Edmonds, pardon?
I'm like, I suppose we should take one sooner or later.
Yeah, round 11, 0 running back so far. But yeah, you're
Like
right.
the
You're
most recent
sticking to what you
startup.
said. Like you're the start of the show. You're like you're not a big fan of taking those running backs early, and you're a big fan of just taking the best players. So it's good that you're living up to the advice that you give to everyone at the start of the show.
Yeah, and this one it looks like so Kareem Hunt went round 10 and Stevenson went round 11. And the most
Yeah,
recent startup I did, I got Hunt in round 11 and Stevenson around 10. So
yeah,
a little round earlier, but
yeah.
um, we got Atlanta running backs here. I love Tyler Algier. I started watching Zach Wilson as soon as he first started getting hyped up at BYU. I'm like,
Yeah.
wait a second. I'm like, who the heck's this running back? He's actually pretty good. And then
Yeah,
last year, like, God, was it 23 touchdowns? I want to say off the top of my head at BYU.
wow.
And he
Yeah,
looked pretty good in the preseason game the other night ago. And everybody was freaked out in the first game because he was the fourth running back in the game and all this stuff. And he was the second one last game. So I'm like, I'm not
yeah.
worried about it.
No.
Patterson's interesting, but it sounds like he's probably going to play more wide receiver this year, honestly.
Yeah.
I think I'm just going to go Tyler Algier here. Because if he
Nice.
kind of hits, this is another guy, like, don't fall in love with the player. As much as I love Tyler Algier, if he kind of hits and somebody offers me a decent pick for him, I'll take it and I'll get my running. If I get a second round 2023 running or pick for next year, then we
Yeah.
get a running back. We'll just say like Sean Tucker gets second or third round draft capital.
Yeah.
And he looks like he's going to be a starter. You probably rather have the day 2 running back than a round 5 running back.
Exactly. It's just an immediate upgrade, right? You're just moving up that capital and just swapping things in. And it's almost like those, you see those videos of those articles about a guy who like trades a pen and gets a house at the end of it, right? You just slowly like creep up and
Trades.
add more value, right? Yeah, exactly.
Start with a
So yeah, I like
paperclip, you
that
trade
pick.
it for a pen, and then you trade the pen
Yeah,
for a notebook, and
yeah,
you trade the notebook for whatever, and then you get up to a car and then a house and whatnot.
yeah. And then after a house, you get the 23 first round pick, like after the house, right? You got to trade your house to get those things at the minute, right?
Oh God. So this
So
will be
here we
interesting.
are, round 12. Yeah,
I
still
like
lots of running backs that are available
I
too,
like
right?
these running backs though. Like you can make a
Yeah,
case for Rashad Penny. Like
yeah.
Kenneth Walker's got this hernia injury that they're kind of playing off now, but it's Pete Carroll, so I don't know if I believe him. And the thing is, if this hernia injury is bad enough, or he injures it more, you're talking about surgery, and then that's an 8-week timeline to come back.
Yeah.
And then if that's the case, he's probably not good this year. So you could draft Rashad Penny here, write him out for part of a year, trade him off to a contender if you're not a contender.
Yeah.
Get something for him, maybe. Melvin Gordon's there. He was productive last year at least, but who knows what they do this year. They're going to use both backs supposedly. We talked about Zamir White before. There's Brian Robinson there. There's Khalil. I'll take Khalil Herbert. I love Khalil Herbert.
Yeah, Khalil Herbert. I think
Montgomery.
I said like a few episodes ago, is Dave Montgomery really that much better than Khalil Herbert? Like, I don't really see it.
This much,
right? Like,
I think he's got slightly better vision, and he's better in pass protection. That's probably it.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
but I think whenever Herbert came in, right, he was very good. He had like just as good, if not better, overall scores than Montgomery did on average at least anyway. So I really like Herbert coming into this year. And yeah, I think he's a bit of a steal at this stage as well. I don't know what the situation is with Montgomery's contract. Are you more privy to that?
it's the last year of his contract.
Yeah, I thought
So they're
so.
probably going to ride him into the ground this year and then move on from him, because I don't think the way
Yeah.
this Bears new front office is, I don't think makes any sense to pay a running back, especially after they're
Yeah.
not willing to pay Roquan Smith.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. They let him go to that Marlon Mack on as well. Is he away? No.
Mm-hmm.
He
Let's
is away.
see.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We're gonna go. Yeah, we'll take the shot on Brian Robinson. Why not?
Brian Robinson, yeah, one of those guys they brought in Washington. Do you think he'll get the goal line work for the Commanders?
I think he's got a decent chance to do it. I don't know if he gets it for sure or not, but he's got as good a chance as anybody.
Yeah.
Daryl Henderson got picked. I probably
Yeah.
should. I probably should have took Daryl Henderson instead. I love Daryl Henderson is somebody I love. I loved him in Memphis.
Yeah.
He's just fun to watch. He's like this little. He's like an oversized Maurice Jones-Drew that runs like a bowling ball. That's why he gets hurt all the time, is because he tries to run people over and he's like 209.
Yeah.
Or he
He
was
just can't.
209.
Yeah, he just has to play at 100%, right? He can't like ease off. He's all gas all the time, right?
And I know so many people hype up Cam Akers, but he wasn't good coming back from the Achilles. And yes, I know he came back soon, but they're
Yeah.
splitting reps with the ones. Like, this is a split backfield, probably.
Yeah, I would say so as well. I think he'll
Uh,
certainly at the start of the season, maybe if one or the other, ends up doing
uh,
much better. But I think at the start of the year it'll be split. And I gotta tell you, Craig, as well, but I tell most people Sleeper has this weird glitch thing where all these quarterbacks kind of stock up here. And I don't know why, but in round number 17, they all kind of go. So there's a bit like of an honor system if you think, oh, actually, this guy wouldn't be here, so we'll not take him. But we're in round 14, so some of these guys probably would still be here.
Yeah. Let's see where we're at. Let's take another peek at running back, and then we might look at tight end too, just because we don't have one.
Oh, we don't have a tight end either, do we? No, we don't. But
I don't typically invest in tight end too early. So we got the pass
Yeah.
catching backs, Naheem Hines, JD McKissick. We kind of
Yeah.
got some plotters here in Hassan Haskins and Gus Edwards. I don't know what to make of Hassan Haskins. The only thing I can say about him is if you need 3 yards, he'll get you 3 yards. If you need 4 yards, he's still probably going to get you 3 yards.
He's going to see almost no field time as well, right? Next year.
Yeah, and everybody's like, oh, Derrick Henry gets hurt, he'll be the guy. But they already said Hilliard's pretty much the backup. And we saw last year Hilliard, and we saw 3 guys split time last year. And if he gets in that Deontay Foreman role, Deontay Foreman averaged 10 points a game, and that's really not somebody you want to start.
I was shocked they let Deontay Foreman go, by the way, right? That seems surprising to me.
Look, it was weird. It was good to see him kind of back to form, but it also, like, that's the Achilles story. Like, if you're banking your head on somebody coming back kind of to form, he's still not as explosive as he once was, because he was just he's kind of a freak, honestly, because he was 235, 240 pounds, and he had burst. Like, you don't see that.
No.
Probably why he got hurt too. I remember he scored a touchdown and he tore his Achilles. I'm like, well, so much for that. He either scored a touchdown or he was down real close to the goal line. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's been a couple years now, but he was another one of those guys that was in that really loaded running back class. God.
But he looked good last year.
He looked decent. He didn't look as good. Like when you go back to Texas and early, like it's hard to compare, I like Chuba Hubbard in college, but now they got him in Foreman, so it's kind of useless to draft either one of them, in my opinion. Keontae Ingram, I'm not as high on. Supposedly he's the running back 4 there, and I just like, some people like him, but I'm like, he's a 6th round pick that maybe does something, maybe ever. Let's take a look at tight end.
Let's have a look. I was going to say as well, Marlon Mack there as well.
Yeah, no.
Like, are you thinking, because you took? Oh no, you didn't take. I thought you did.
I didn't take
your Houston. I thought you did take him.
Yeah, so I kind of like that strategy, because I don't like double dipping and grabbing both guys in the same backfield. So Higbee's there. He's a guy essentially.
Fine.
I
Yeah.
don't believe people try to hype up Evan Ingram. I'm like, it's still Evan Ingram. Like,
Yeah.
I'd rather just draft Dan Arnold. Like, we already seen him be decent with Trevor
Yeah.
Lawrence.
Yeah. Tunyon is there as well, obviously. He
Yeah.
was injured last year, but then the year before that, he had that massive year, very dependent on touchdowns, but Rodgers will
Yeah,
probably be looking for him
it
again.
is like the most statistically improbable here touchdowns.
Yeah.
Because Jared Cook had it like the year before, and even when you compare the two, he scored on a higher rate than Jared Cook did. So like it was bound to
Wow.
come down. And last year we seen somebody like kind of every year do that, but it's not repeatable, or it's very hard.
No.
It's slightly repeatable, but not to the same length. Last year was kind of Dawson Knox.
Yeah, definitely.
So I like Brevin Jordan here. He played 9 games for the Texans last year. He had a top 12 finish in 4 of them.
Yeah,
We probably can get him in the next round still.
I would
But
say so.
yeah, we'll take Marlon Mack and then we'll come back to Brevin Jordan, I think.
Nice. Let's do that. Let's get Marlon
Get all
Mack.
the
Wow, you're going. Yeah, you're going to have people calling you a homer in the comments now, right? You got back to back Texas, right?
Yeah. I mean, but if you look at the guys that are going here, I'm like, I don't want McCole Hardman. DJ Chark's
No,
very
McCole
like,
Hardman is terrible. That's why. Like he is. I hate McCole Hardman. I can't stand him. I'm a Chiefs fan. He frustrates me so much. I can't
catch.
wait for his contract to be up and he
And then
leaves.
they signed MVS, who's just another version of
Yeah,
McCole
I
Hardman.
know. Yeah.
Get fast guys that can't catch.
Yeah, it seems to
Oh,
be a
Jarvis
running.
Landry is still there. I like Jarvis Landry this year, especially if
Yeah.
something happens to Kamara. And like everybody's just like, oh, well, they said nothing's probably gonna happen this year. Well, his court date's September 29th. If they find him, like if he gets guilty there, something's gonna happen. Unless that court
Yeah,
date gets pushed
surely.
back again. But like if this is all true and they have video of him punching the dude in the face,
Yeah,
what
I've
he's
heard
being
this
charged of
video.
is, but he's being charged with bodily or a battery with bodily harm in
Yeah.
Nevada. That is a minimum 1-year prison sentence.
Ooh.
Granted,
Is the trial in Nevada?
yeah, because it happened in Nevada.
Yeah.
And was it yesterday or the day before? Tony Busby, the guy that was representing the women in the Deshaun Watson case, just took on
Yes.
his victim. So it's probably going to drag out longer now. So it'd probably be okay. But I'm just like, I'm off of Alvin Kamara. There's too many red flags this year. 27 now. He's been hurt 2 out of the past 3 years. You got Michael Thomas back now too. You got Jarvis Landry and Chris Olave. So you have more pass catchers overall. You have no Sean Payton.
Yep.
Like, you can just go on and on and on. And then you got this, like he might get suspended. He might go to jail. Like,
yeah, there's a lot of red flags.
And like for Dynasty, I don't want him at all because he's already at the age cliff. And then you got all that stuff looming over top of it. So it's just like, ugh. Like in redraft, you can make a case if he falls far enough, but God,
yeah, definitely.
Running backs.
We're still on the running backs here. Obviously, there are other positions as well you can have a look at. So you got
we're gonna take Brevin Jordan. I think he's still there.
Yes, he will be, won't he?
Okay. Yeah, we'll just take Brevin Jordan.
So let's get that was the plan all along. Actually, I forgot about that. So let's get Brevin Jordan locked up, and obviously you'll know more than myself as well because you watch a lot of the Texans play. Jordan looked really good last year from my eyes. You think as well? He was looking pretty strong.
So the thing is, he looked good. They said he's not going to start this year, but it's just because he doesn't block. Honestly, he's still going to come in and play packages and all that stuff too. So it's just I don't know how you want to even explain that, but it's just like he's going to play and he's probably going to be like he could be the third leading catcher on the team, behind Cooks and probably Nico Collins, I assume. But who knows if Nico does anything this year either? Like he could be second. Like if he's the second guy on the team, that could be pretty good for a tight end. Like all you need for out of your tight end is targets. That's what matters.
Absolutely.
Ooh, KJ Osborne's there. Give me KJ Osborne. I don't even care.
You went straight to KJ Osborne there. What
So I love
what about KJ Osborne? Are you thinking like because Thielen's like not got long left? You thinking Osborne can slot right in and get a bigger role soon, or do you like him this year as well?
Yeah, Osborne was really good last year down the stretch. Here's your quarterback, man.
Yep, every time.
So Osborne was really good down the stretch last year, and he's shown to be really good. Like, and he's kind of the weird guy because typically guys that don't do anything the rookie year don't typically produce in their career. And he only punt returned his rookie year. He didn't play offense like at all. He didn't have a single catch, nothing. But he was a guy, he produced in college at Buffalo, transfers to the University of Miami in Florida, and produces there. That's the type of prospect you need to look for, is some of these smaller school guys that go to a bigger school and actually produce as well. Had pretty good testing. He's got very good hands. He only had one drop last year, and he had 90 some targets, I think he had. And Thielen's been hurt the last 3 years. You get a new offensive coordinator now, so kind of coming over, that wants to run 3 wide receiver sets. He is the third wide receiver. He can play on the outside. He can play in the slot. All 3 of these guys can play in the slot, so they're going to mix and match them around, hopefully with a new creative guy and not just Gary Kubiak and his son and Zimmer and all these old timers, they don't have creativity. You see it often in the NFL, but he's got value. He's still kind of undervalued. If some have it as a Thielen, his market, his target share goes up. People are still excited about Irv Smith, but he's already banged up again. So
was it his hand or his
with his hand? He should be good for week 1, but if he's not, your other tight ends are blocking tight ends. They're not going to throw those. So there's a lot of
that's a nice pick there. At the 16th round as well, which is good. And in 17, you've got, we talked about him earlier, actually, really Romeo Doubs there. Devontae Parker got a chance to be that number 1 receiver in New England as well, sitting there. Nico Collins, your guy, sitting down there too, right?
I will take Josh Palmer here. I like Josh Palmer quite a bit at Tennessee. His quarterback play, he's one of those. So he's the kind of that outlier of guys that don't really produce in college that have a chance to produce in the NFL because of how bad his quarterback was.
Okay.
Or how bad the quarterback in general was at Tennessee the whole time he was there.
Oh, it was at Tennessee. Yeah.
But if you look at some of his best games, came against these top SEC corners, these guys that got drafted really high. Your J.C. Horns, when they played Alabama, he played pretty well. It was all the guys that got drafted with reasonable draft capital. Those were his best games against the best competition. So he got elevated. He played really good when he stepped in for like the 2 starts last year. He's the number 1. He's the clear number 3 receiver now because Jalen Guyton's never been. He runs in a straight line really fast. That's
stretch the field. Yeah, he's maybe the new Keenan Cole, right? Jalen Guyton. He'll move about and just stretch the field, right?
Can you run in a straight line fast? Yes, I can do that. That's why that 40-yard dash doesn't matter, because how many times do you run 40 yards straight down the field? Well, if you're Keenan, if you're Keelan Cole and Jalen Guyton and Demarcus Robinson, you do it quite a bit, but everybody else, not so much. But Palmer had real opportunity, and Keenan Allen's like, is he 30 or 31 now? I think it's just 30.
I think he's 30.
And then Mike Williams, he's good to get hurt a couple games a year. Absolutely. So there's opportunities there. And if they use him more now, it could be really interesting.
He's good in preseason too, right?
Yeah. He had a good game this past week.
Yeah. So we're on the last pick now, actually, Craig. Round 18, final pick of the draft.
I guess we'll take a look at running back, and then we'll take a look at tight end as well.
Yeah. Let's have a look at running back. Mark Ingram's there. Obviously, he could capitalize on this Alvin Kamara potential red flag. Mark Ingram could have a bit of value. Dearness Johnson, Eno Benjamin, Chris Evans, Kenyon Drake, who's, I don't think he's signed anywhere, has he? I don't think so. And Jerome Ford as well.
Yeah. Jerome Ford, I know a lot of people are talking up because he kind of had a couple nice runs in the preseason, but he's one of those guys too. It's like, he doesn't do a lot, but when he gets loose, he's fast enough to run a long way. So I'm typically not a person that targets those type of running backs anyways.
Yeah.
Let's go back to tight end real quick.
Let's have a little look, see who's there at tight end. Tunion's still there. Hayden Hurst, maybe a sneaky tight end by at the Bengals. Greg Dulcich, Austin Hooper. Daniel Bellinger. I'm excited about Daniel Bellinger going into next season. You as well, yeah?
That's my boy. So he was a very good blocker at San Diego State. He didn't catch a lot of passes because they like to run the ball there. Yeah. Obviously, with the running backs that they've produced at the NFL level, or they produced to the NFL. Not all of them produced in the NFL. But there was Rashad Penny, and then before him was Donnell Pumphrey, who was, I think he's still the leading rusher in all of college football history for a career.
Oh, wow.
But didn't turn into, he was part of that loaded running back draft class with Aaron Jones and Joe Mixon and Dalvin Cook and all that. He was one of those ones that didn't turn out. but
Yeah.
he was kind of undersized scat back too. So
Mm.
I like Bellinger at this point in time. There's probably some of these other guys that I would take above him just because he probably comes back around if there's another round too. But I do like him. He showed off the athleticism at the combine. This is the thing. Like when I was watching tight end group, I'm like, hey, this kid's pretty freaking good. And like,
Yeah.
biggest thing that sold me about him there at the Senior Bowl, there was a podcast from it was a Lions based podcast, and they were just talking to him. I think they ran into him at the airport or something. I can't remember the full
Yeah.
details. A great podcast though. When they were talking to him, really good guy. And when he's talking, he's just like, I love to block. Like I love like physically dominating somebody else pretty much. I'm like,
Nice.
this is the guy you want on your team. And then he comes
That'll
out and
get you. Yeah, that'll get you on the field, right? Which is so
yeah,
important, and then that's
and then
half the
tight
battle,
end group.
especially as a rookie tight end, right? If you can come out and block already, that's huge. You have less,
Mhm.
less time worrying about like these tight ends developing. If he's going to be on the field, then that's great.
Yeah. And that tight end room is so weak there. It's him, Ricky Seals Jones, like Jordan Akins, Chris Myrick's there too.
Yeah,
I was sad they didn't bring back Caden Smith. I love Caden Smith out of Stanford. He had a good rookie year when Evan Ingram got hurt and Daniel Jones really liked him, and then they just kind of used him as a blocker and didn't do much else
yeah,
with him after that. But
yeah,
I'm going to go Austin Hooper here just because it's probably the highest target share of any of these tight ends that are available. We've seen him
yeah,
be productive in the past. If there's another round, I'd probably get a Daniel Bellinger. I probably look at like
yeah.
a Logan Thomas later too.
Yeah, absolutely. And Hooper, yeah, you're right. He'll get a lot of targets over there at Tennessee, and yeah, he'll be a guy that you're not going to be too upset about if someone's injured and you have to put him in that
Mm.
spot. And he's hopefully a backup, but yeah, he can be pretty solid there. So, Craig, that is us finished our mock draft. Let's have a little look at our
Woo.
roster and we'll get your reactions to it. So we got Lamar Jackson in at quarterback. Gotta absolutely love it there. You got your running backs. Obviously, you didn't take a running back until my goodness, where was it? Round
11.
number 11. Yeah, so you got Tyler Algier locked in and Khalil Herbert. Gotta love that. Khalil Herbert locked in as well. You got a wide receiver core of T. Higgins, DJ Moore, Garrett Wilson. You got Brevin Jordan sitting in a tight end with flex spots of Devonta Smith and Cortland Sutton. You got Trey Lance in your super flex role. That could be Zach Wilson some weeks as well, who
Mm.
we've also got. Then you've got Hunter Renfro, Chase Claypool, Brian Robinson, Marlon Mack, KJ Osborne, Joshua Palmer, and also Austin Hooper. How you feeling about that draft, Craig?
I mean, I feel reasonably well about it. I mean, if we took some older players earlier on, I probably would have taken a running back earlier because if you're kind of in that window where you're competitive, but that's kind of
Yeah,
knowing. And typically in startups, I like to trade back and acquire picks as much as I can too, but
yeah,
I couldn't do that in this situation.
yeah,
So I kind of like loading up on the wide receivers and guys that are going to maintain value for a longer period of time, or guys that are going to gain value, trade them off. So like maybe Marlon Mack, if he has a couple enough nice weeks at the beginning of the year, you trade him off for a pick.
yeah,
Trying to remember who else was there. Even like Cortland Sutton, if he has a really good year and you can trade him away for
yeah,
like first and something, probably should do it.
yeah,
Um, but and then so this year it's probably not. It's young enough team where you're not probably winning this year, but then you go get some picks, move up in the first round. Maybe you get all the way up to like a 101, or it'd be interesting to see if Bijan Robinson goes 101 next year if it's one of the quarterbacks. Probably going to be CJ
yeah,
Stroud and Superflex, but there's a
probably.
long way to go till we get to that point. But if you move up and you get a pretty good running back at Jameer Gibbs and a Bijan Robinson, or say you get two picks in the first round, you're able to grab two of those guys.
Yeah,
Now you have your running back set and the whole rest of your team set, and then you're just good to go.
100%. Yeah, I think you've done sort of what I will do as well. You kind of gone quite young, and then you've gone, right, if I'm going with a young team, there's no point me having like these win now running backs here because they're just going to, if anything, they're just going to win me more games, which I don't necessarily want right now. So, yeah, I think you've built it really nicely for the future. That wide receiver core there is looking particularly strong, I think, as well, with T. Higgins, DJ Moore, Garrett Wilson, all, got big futures left in the NFL. Devonta Smith, the same. Cortland Sutton, a bit older, but still not old by any stretch of the
Mhm.
imagination. And Chase Claypool and Joshua Palmer and KJ Osborne at the end there with slightly riskier in terms of can they make it, but there's a huge upside there as well, and they're so young. So I think
Yep.
you've done excellent building that young right receiver core. You've got your quarterbacks locked in. The only thing will be is get those running backs locked in, and then you're good to go, which is exactly how I think you should build a young team. So I think you've done a smashing job, Craig.
Yep. I don't know how long your episodes normally are, but probably a little bit longer because I like to talk. So
No, I think you've done a great job, and I just wanted to say, like, just thanks so much for taking the time, coming on the show, sharing, loads of knowledge as well. Like, it was great to hear. You've obviously got so much insight about like the college game as well, which we don't often, talk about an awful lot on this show. But it's great to hear. You've obviously got loads of expertise about that, and loads of great stats coming off the dome. So it was amazing to hear, Craig. And yeah, obviously made a great team as well. And just want to say thanks for coming on. And guys, if you enjoyed listening as well, behind me here we've got the Hall of Flame. So make sure on YouTube you're giving this video a big thumbs up. The more likes Craig gets, the higher he's going to go up the charts as well. And just don't forget as well, yeah, let's get you up to the top, mate. Let's do that. And don't forget as well, you're going over, where can they find you again on YouTube, Craig?
yeah, so on YouTube, it's at Coach Craig Sports, mainly DFS over there. So once we get it back around to NFL regular season, I'll be doing the NFL regular season DFS right now. I got MLB DFS going on right now. There'll be a little bit of overlap where I'm doing both, so it's gonna be fun doing that. But then you can check out my daily cheat sheets for MLB DFS if you're into that over at WeBetATS.com. I wrote a couple NBA articles over there too. Probably going to do some NFL DFS cheat sheets on their website as well. It's a newer site, still building it up, but there's a pretty good team there. We got there's going to be a lot of different content. I know that our editor, Matt, he's going to do some fantasy football articles. We got a guy that's writing about tennis. We got a guy was writing a little bit of golf and stuff like that too. So It's still relatively new, but there's some decent content coming out. I think one of the guys is doing some UFC stuff as well. So
cool.
Be very interested to see how that all plays out. Check out, True North over on their website and on YouTube. Check out Sons of Dynasty over at Dynasty Sons on Twitter, as well as Sons of Dynasty on YouTube. They're doing their SODFS as well, which would be Friday nights where they just kind of do their little live podcast, talk about the guys they like as well. So pretty interesting overall. You can also check out my Patreon at patreon.com/Coach Craig Sports. I have snap count spreadsheets over there. So every week I go through. There's no other place that has like this is in depth, because like you can go on like Pro Football Reference and click on Elijah Moore and it'll tell you snap counts week by week by week. So what I have is a spreadsheet and I put it all together. It's all the Jets players. So like it'd be a page of the Jets players. So you see how many snaps each wide receiver played each respective week. And then you can say, okay, so this guy played more this week and this guy played less this week. And then you can go and look at it and try to figure out why. And that's something I watch a lot of trends, especially like if you play IDP, because IDP, you want the linebackers there on the field more often than not.
Yes.
So sometimes there's guys that are under the radar. A guy that I like a lot this year is Drew Tranquil, because he's going to be on the field a lot for the Chargers this year. And even if you're talking about the Patriots, Jawan Bentley, he's been around for a while. There's no Devontae Hightower now. He's probably going to be on the field a lot. So guys like that, there's value, and they're buried on Sleeper. Like if you're drafting an IDP, these guys are buried, especially in Dynasty. And they're still relatively young players too. So I do that. And then I have what I call my matchup sheet. It's a little bit different than I did last year, but essentially I have every team, the positions where the wide receivers line up. So left, right, slot, the positions they most line up in. And then I have corners, left, right, slot, the ones that they line up in the most. I do a little bit of something with linebackers too, but then I have it color coded for the defensive backs, whether it's like, okay, so this guy, he's in red, that's probably somebody you don't want to go against. He's in green, that's probably somebody you want to play the player against them. And then yellow is kind of in the middle, because there has to be kind of a neutral ground. It's not a favorable matchup or unfavorable. And then what I did this year, I took it over for the 18-game schedule, and then have it pulling from the wide receivers, and you can see their matchup each individual week based on where players are lined up. And then so like you could look at Randall Cobb, and Randall Cobb plays in the slot, and you can look at the first 5 weeks of the season. Randall Cobb has very, very good matchups those first 5 weeks of the season. So maybe use it for fantasy football. Maybe you use that for DFS. There's lots of different ways to do it.
Nice. I absolutely love that. That sounds amazingly in depth, Craig. That sounds brilliant. And what a great, we talked earlier about there's so many amazing tools out there for helping your fantasy football. And that, to me sounds like one of those amazing tools where you can see, like, just get a bit more in depth on the, sleeper projected points, right? Go a bit more in depth and look at it in terms of a matchup perspective, which you're offering to people over at your Patreon. So definitely, guys, go over there, check it out, and see those cool things that he's doing. So, Craig, just one more time, I wanted to say thank you so much for coming onto the show and giving everyone so many good hints and tips and advice and drafting an epic team as well. And remember, get those thumbs up. Let's get them on the Hall of Fame as well. And just want to say, everyone as well, yes, thumbs up. Everyone as well. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time in the hot seat. Just remember, even though we're cooling off for a bit, keep yourselves and your teams lit, and we'll see you next time.